Okay, good. So it seems that we now have people with us. So hello everybody. Welcome to the Ipswich user group reboot. We're just going to go through some inductions and one or two bits and pieces, and then we'll be handing over to the guys at AWS to give us a recap on some of the core announcements. So without further ado, so introductions. So the organising committee has slightly kind of expanded a little bit, and we've also got some additional support. So I've joined it, but Lee and everybody else who was part of the organising committee before was still on it. But we're also supported by one of the two guys at AWS now. So just a shout out on that list to Kev. Kev and a couple of others in the community, just shouting out because over the lockdown period, especially the kind of the start of the year when everybody went to school remote learning, I ran a little bit of campaign on social media stuff around getting laptops for kids, because lots of kids didn't have the equipment they needed to do the Google Classroom or whatever platform their school was using at the time. So Kev and one or two other people dug out their old laptops, turned them into Chromebooks, and donated them to their local schools. So thank you all for doing that, and particularly Kev, because I know I was speaking to Kev around the time. So that's good. From AWS, we have Ozzy. Ozzy is a solutions architect at AWS. He works in the startup area, supporting startups throughout East Anglia. So he's kind of the dedicated East Anglian architect from AWS. He'll be our main presenter. I first met Ozzy on a plane flying to reInvent, as you do. Him and his partner were going there for Vegas for the first time, and me and some colleagues gave us some top tips of how to lose all his money, but also have a good reInvent. So it's good to see Ozzy again getting back in touch with us. And then we have Isabel. Isabel is one of the lead UK developer advocates at AWS. So she's responsible for lots of the community events and running the user group kind of program. So they're with us tonight. And a shout out to Mark and Lee as well. So shout out to some support. So it's the guys at AWS that are helping us tonight run this event, and the guys at Inner Wisdom. So AWS not only providing the main content of this evening's recap, but they also help sponsor us in terms of the meetup and everything around that platform. So they help us in that area and can help us with other things. So if one of you guys and girls have some ideas and you want to present, but you maybe want some kind of few credits towards your expenses of doing that on AWS, we can help you with AWS and some of the other things I have available to give you a small amount of credits to allow you to do some of those demos and things that we hope you produce. So big thank you for AWS, and then big thank you to Inner Wisdom. A lot of the emails and stuff coming out would have been from Inner Wisdom Marketing. That's because we managed to convince basically the work to help us out here. So we're using their platform for this evening. So that's why you would have seen lots of that. So big thank you to Inner Wisdom for giving us that capability and supporting us at this time. So our vision is to still go back to fundamentally the meetup we once had, the meetup done at a local venue, ideally a local pub, where we can book out a back room somewhere with some basic presenting capabilities and a bar on tap, and somewhere where we can get pizzas delivered to. That's still our idea, and still we want that to be a experience where local people can come and talk to us. That's the main vision. Now we will be in the market for getting some sponsors to help us fund that, because sometimes hiring venues might cost a little bit. Buying the pizza definitely costs a little bit, and beer doesn't come necessarily for free. So we'll be looking for one or two people to help contribute towards getting kind of funding that side of it. But for now, we want to continue the virtual event just due to this COVID pandemic period. But beyond that, we are probably looking to go back to a physical one. Hopefully, if you believe Boris's roadmap, probably sometime towards the end of the year, September, October time, something like that. So the idea is that we have this meetup, and if you guys want it, another meetup probably in the summer virtually, and then hopefully a proper physical one towards the end of the year. That may be that we do that on the BT campus at the time, because we can probably get a venue there free and go to the pub afterwards, but we need to sort that out, especially there's a bit of a pain having to sign into BT as well. So we will work through the logistics of that and the venue closer to that time. If you have any ideas, anyway, you know, that is relatively well connected in terms of getting to, that would be good. Isaacs was kind of a good location, central to town, but if you've got another idea, please reach out to one of the organising team, and we'll probably bite your arm off. So regarding content, yeah, so predominantly we want this to be local to us, local to the area. We have in the area quite a number of AWS businesses actually. They're quite a broad bunch. So we have BT, and BT are now using AWS quite a lot, particularly the BT Sport and video and TV platforms are using AWS quite heavily. We actually have 2 AWS partners in the region, in the area. So we have InnoWisdom and we have KCOM. So we welcome both. So we have lots of talent, lots of AWS people also in the area to call upon. But the most exciting ones, to be honest, we want to hear from guys like the guys at Matrix, and we've got 1 or 2 contacts there about how they're using it. We want to get into how the people on the ground in kind of Ipswich and surrounding area are really using AWS. So if you have an idea or if you're using it and want to present, please get in touch with one of us, and we'll be happy to have you speak at one of our events. We may also join up with 1 or 2 other user groups. So particularly, and I'm going to say this, and the blue supporters are probably going to boo me, but that's fine. We might link up with the knowledge user group. They're also quite a substantial user group, but also in this pandemic period, it's a bit complicated. So that we might throw 1 or 2 events together where we share content and that kind of thing, just to kind of get a good solid number of people available and attending, basically. So we have that ability, and also through Isabel's contacts or my own contacts, we have lots of external speakers that can also come along, but we really want to prefer the local content. But if people would like some of the external speakers, like I know we had the guys from a Cloud Guru come before and speak about training and certification, we can reach out to those people. Worst case, and this really is worst case, if we can't get anybody, you're going to have to listen to me prattle on for a while about something about AWS. I'm okay at it, but I prefer somebody else to come up with some exciting local content, really. And then we can also think about what kind of content we do want, and we've obviously gone previously with the format of presentations and then beers afterwards, but there is the option of doing workshops, games days, and short talks as well, where we just get around a whiteboard and talk about architectures and how to do things on AWS. So we can arrange that kind of session for you as well. And then in between times, there is these days there is chat platforms like Slack, Discord, the up and coming Clubhouse that we're looking at, or ways that maybe we can communicate outside of the meetup space. Mentioning some of the wider ones, so I think it's the week after next, the Community Summit Online is attending. That's the UK Online Summit. It's a whole 2 or 3 hours event that you can go along to. That's got lots of speakers, lots of content, so please look at that. And also later in March, there is the UK user group out of London for you to go along to. I know some of you have been there before and have watched me prattle on about something for a few hours. So that's the up and coming events. At the end of this webinar, conference, meetup, virtual meetup, you will get the survey. It'll give the AWS some guys feedback on their content, and also lots of these things I just raised in the last few minutes about what we're doing, how we're going to do it. There's basically some of that survey is going to ask you what you want to do, because we want this to be about what you guys want, the content you want, how you want to run it. And that's our strong view, is that we want to be there for the community. Now, without further ado, we'll hand over to Ozzy, who's going to be running us through our AWS recap and some demos along the way. Ozzy, I'll make you presenter and you can take it away.
Thank you. Can you see my screen now?
Excellent. We can see your developer screen.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Phil, and good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I'm really kind of honored to be here to present to you the AWS reInvent 2020 recap for developers. So the focus of the presentation will be around some of the releases we did in reInvent, focused on or that will benefit developers. So my name is Ozioma Ozegu. You can just call me Ozzy. I'm a solution architect in AWS. And like Phil mentioned, I work with our customers in the east of England. So kind of passionate about the area. I'm also local as well. So kind of want to connect with all of you once we kind of move to the physical contact. So just before I delve deep, just to give a high-level overview of what's reInvent. So reInvent is a technical conference we run every year. And what usually happens, we get 60,000 people usually register, descend Las Vegas for a week of technical content. But this year things were a bit different. We moved the conference virtual, but we had over 540,000 people that registered for the event, and 300,000 people participating in some shape or form. But I think what wasn't really different was the releases that we've done in as part of reInvent 2020. We released quite a number of services, new services, and updates to existing services. So I will be kind of walking you through some of this, quite a lot as to cover within 45 to 50 minutes, but I'll try as much as possible to cover some of the areas I feel would be good to know about, things around containers, serverless, database, AIML management, and things we did around mobile, or with the developer focus. And yeah, hope you find it interesting. So without further ado, I will start with the releases we did around containers. So as you might already be aware, AWS still remains the #1 place for you to run containers in the cloud. Over 80% of all containers are in the public cloud run on AWS. And over the years, we've released a couple of services that help customers to bring their containers and run their containers on the platform. So Amazon AKS is our managed Kubernetes service. We also have Amazon ECS, which is a proprietary container orchestration platform owned by AWS. And then you've got the AWS Fargate, which is the serverless compute service that supports both running your containers in either EKS or ECS. But I think one thing that our customers have told us is that they really want to run containers across boundaries as against just running containers in the cloud. And this can be for various regions. It can be either for compliance or regulatory requirements, or some customers that have already made some CapEx investments in their on-premises data center and want to kind of sweat those investments before potentially moving to the cloud. And that's really why we have launched what we call Amazon ECS Anywhere. So this is coming in 2021. It's currently on preview. But what this would do would be to allow you to run the ECS you know and love today on the AWS platform, but now on your own data center. So we'll be providing the same ECS APIs, the cluster management and workload scheduling that you use on the platform. And you don't need to do any sort of running or updating or managing your own container orchestration platform. It's all kind of, you can leverage the service and deploy your containers either on your on-premises data center, or if you have an outpost, or if you have local zone, or if you have wavelengths as well. So it works on any infrastructure, so it can be deployed on a VM or a bare metal infrastructure. But one thing to add there is that the control plane for ECS remains in the cloud. So what this allows you to do is the control plane remains in the cloud, but the worker nodes that runs your task, whether it's a VM or whether it's a bare metal, can be anywhere basically. So that's really the key feature of Amazon ECS anyway, and it's coming in 2021. Another service we released as part of our containers releases was EKS Distro. So we've run EKS for quite a number of years now, and what we've managed to do or identify as part of that is we've identified a set of components that customers like to run their Kubernetes cluster on. So what we've done as part of that is to package that into what we call EKS Distro, and it's going to be the same testing and security patching cycle as you have on your EKS that runs in the cloud. And it's also proven to operate at scale. So all the patches and version alignments will align with the EKS we run on AWS, but it will be available for everyone as an open source project. So it will be released on GitHub under Apache 2.0, generally available at the moment. And what that means is that you can basically deploy EKS, similar to the EKS we run on the cloud, and on your on-premises environment, or even on AWS Outpost as well. What we've also done with that is to also release what we call EKS Anywhere. This is coming in 2021. But what this then does is to help you to kind of provide that seamless experience between EKS running in the cloud and EKS running in an on-premise data center. So imagine creating a cluster. So what EKS Anywhere will help you to do is to create an EKS distro compatible cluster and also provide lifecycle management of that cluster. So things around operating the environment, updating the software patches, or handling backups and recovery, that's what this does for you. And it's also provide a single pane of glass so that you could be able to see the EKS running in the cloud and also the EKS running on any infrastructure, whether it's a VM or bare metal infrastructure as well. And does the work of operating your clusters as well on premises. So this is it works close together with EKS Distro. So it's the orchestrator for EKS Distro. It's coming in 2021, but for now you can basically go check out EKS Distro or fork EKS Distro from GitHub and deploy it anywhere at the moment. And when EKS Anywhere comes in the future, you can use that to manage the orchestration of your EKS distro in terms of creating clusters and managing the life cycle. Okay, and finally, in the container space, the last release we made, I wanted to discuss with you today, is the Elastic Container Registry released the public version of this registry. So if you imagine developers that basically need to host public images that customers or users can download. We've heard a lot from those developers in terms of the way they do this today. Previously, they need to launch this on third-party public registries. And the feedback we've gotten from our customers is that in some cases, some of these registries don't kind of give the availability commitments they need, or even the usage limits can be a bit restrictive for them to operate at scale. So in many cases, they maintain a local copy of their images and also have the public copy in a public registry. So what we've done as part of this is to make Elastic Container Registry public, to have a public registry. So today, prior to this, you had Elastic Container Registry, which you can use on your AWS account, but is a private registry for your account. But now we have another kind of URL and version that you can also kind of host your images in the public space. And what we give customers at the back of that, you get the 50 gigabyte free storage for your images every month. And if you are going to download an image and run the container within AWS, whether on EKS or ECS, you get that you're not kind of charged any kind of bandwidth requirement or tied to any defined data bandwidth. So that's kind of compelling for customers. And also, as you could imagine, AWS will replicate your images across various regions just to make sure that it's highly available. And some of the pain customers have had using some third-party open public registries are kind of solved and quite seamless for them to push their containers to the public. Okay, and moving on to serverless, I will do a little bit more on serverless because this is kind of an interesting area. I know quite a developers are quite passionate about. One of the first releases we made around serverless was around enabling support for container images on AWS Lambda. For those that don't know, Lambda is our kind of serverless compute service. So it basically is an event-driven compute service. You just bring your code and you don't worry about the underlying physical infrastructure up to the operating system that runs your code. You just bring your code and events kind of trigger your code to run. Previously, prior to this release, you can package your code as a zip file, upload it into S3, and Lambda runs your code from the zip file. But what we've done as part of the release is to also enable customers to bring container images to AWS Lambda. And this can be Docker images or any open container initiative compatible image as well. And why we made this release is that a lot of our customers have invested in tools and technologies and have deep skills when it comes to container orchestration and building containerized workloads. And a lot of our customers have really want to kind of retain those skills and be able to create containers that they can also deploy on AWS Lambda against doing that via zip file. So this kind of quite compelling for our customers, and we've seen quite a lot of adoption in this space. You can bring containers up to 10 gigabytes or size, and you can deploy Lambda function either built on top of third-party based images as well. And how this works is that developers can basically create your container image, and this is similar to the way you kind of create your Docker images today. And then you can push that image to Amazon Elastic Container Registry, and then using your Docker commands as well. And then you can create your function via directing your function to leverage a container image you must have stored in ECR. And then using the event-driven mechanism of Lambda, once that Lambda is called, it will orchestrate or it will run your container image. Okay, so just to quickly demo this, I will showcase how this works. So what I've got on my screen is a simple application I've just put together. That kind of what it basically does is to generate a random file. So this is a PDF. It generates a PDF document filled with kind of random text using Faka library. So it's just a simple demo just to showcase how this works. And so this is the Lambda function written in Node.js. And I've also included the package.json file that includes the dependencies that this function needs to run. In terms of writing the Docker file, it's basically the same way you write Docker files today. So importing the base image. So we've provided a number of Lambda based images can be downloaded from Docker Hub, also from the public ECR repository. Put some links here as well for that. Or you can also bring your own base image as well. And then once you create your Docker image, you have your code, source code, you have your package.json, you've created your Docker image. The next thing then is to kind of build your image. So I've just included the steps here. These are the things you can quickly go through on your console. Build the image, push that to, you can test that locally, and then push that to ECR. So I'll just quickly go back to my AWS console. I've just run those commands. Just because of time, I wouldn't kind of want to run those commands individually, but I'll just show you quickly here. I've managed to kind of upload that image you saw there to my ECR repository. And what you can then do in Lambda is you can then create a function that will pick up that image as the code to run. So in the steps to create a function, you could see there's a new option there for your container image. So you could select that and give this a name, test container Lambda. And then it will ask you for your image, container image URI. So you can browse your images. So it basically references what you've stored on your ECR image repository. I'll select this one. And yeah, and I select the image, and then it gives you also options to kind of override some aspects of the container in terms of the entry point and the worker directory. And of course, it always gives you can create a new role for your Lambda execution role, or you can use an existing role. Let's leave this as default for now. And then you can click on create function. So it goes through the process of the usual creating of function for Lambda. But what I've also done is that I've got a function here that I've already been created. This will take a bit of time to complete. So I've got a function here that's, okay, that was fast, that's good. So, okay, still creating. So I might as well just pick this one I've created before. So this is a Lambda function that I created only a few minutes ago before this, and it contains the same base image I just created on the other one. So it's all ready to go. Then the next thing is to run this Lambda function so you can see how it works. I think to do that, I'll basically add a quick API to basically call the Lambda function. I'll create a quick HTTP API and make it open for now and add. And then we can basically trigger the Lambda function by calling this API endpoint. Like I said, Lambda is an event-driven service, so it needs an event to be able to run. So I will be just opening this in the new tab, and hopefully it should download a PDF file with some content there that just has just a sample that just has some text. So you could see that we have been able to kind of deploy or run Lambda function via container image. Previously, this is what you would have done with a zip file, but now we now support container images. So that's the quick demo on that. Just moving back to the slide. So another release we also made in Invent was to enable the 1 millisecond billing granularity for Lambda. So previously, this was 100 milliseconds, and I mean, I know this might sound what difference does this make? But if you run Lambda functions that are very short duration functions, things like maybe 15 seconds or 15 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds, and you've got quite a lot of these functions, maybe you're running maybe 100 Lambda functions in your account with 1 million requests every day, this begins to kind of stack up. So for our customers that run quite a big environment with short duration function, this kind of makes a lot of difference in terms of cost savings. And we apply this from December 2020 billing cycle. So check your bills and you'll see these benefits come true for you as well. And it's applied to all AWS accounts and to all regions that we support Lambda. So moving on to databases, we've also made a couple of releases with regards to databases. I think the first big one we made was around going to preview of Amazon Aurora Serverless v2. For just a quick overview of what Aurora is. So we launched Aurora a couple of years ago, and it has been one of our rapidly growing services. And what we try to do for customers is to kind of help customers to move away from the old guard databases like your Oracle or Microsoft MySQL Server, but give customers the enterprise-grade features you get from open source databases like your PostgreSQL and MySQL. So we have Aurora PostgreSQL and also Aurora MySQL. So a couple of years ago as well, we released Aurora Serverless, and what this helps customers to do is to not to worry about the underlying physical infrastructure that kind of runs your database, so worrying about the capacity you need to assign to Aurora, or kind of the instances that run your database. But what we found out from customers was that, or what we also realized was that that is not kind of apply for all use cases, especially for spiky workloads. So if you have workloads that are a bit spiky, irregular demand profiles can scale up in the morning and down and up again in the afternoon, and irregular pattern with spiky workloads, it didn't kind of fit that use case with Serverless v1, and that's really what Serverless v2 addresses. So it can scale to hundreds of thousands of transactions in a fraction of a second. And it can do that in fine-grained increments to mirror your demand profile. And if you compare that to what you would have done without serverless, which is to provision at the maximum capacity you need, you have about 90% cost savings as well, and you get the full breadth of Aurora features like global databases, read replicas, and multi-AZ support. So it's still in preview, but we've gotten a lot of interest from our customers on this, and it will be coming later in the year as well. Another release we made around databases is Babelfish for Amazon Aurora PostgreSQL. And I think this is one of my favorite ones, if I'm allowed to have a favorite release. But what it allows customers to do is to run MySQL Server applications directly on Amazon Aurora with little to no code changes. Let me just explain this a little bit. So we've seen massive adoption of Aurora, and then how customers do that, especially for example, for MS SQL Server, was to migrate from MS SQL Server to Aurora PostgreSQL Server. And to do that, they used some of the tools we've created, like schema conversion tool and database migration service. But after that migration, they need to also refactor their code to be able to start making use of, move away from the T-SQL proprietary to Microsoft SQL Server to PostgreSQL queries. That is quite a big ask for some of our customers, especially applications, legacy applications that have been there for a bit. So in sometimes it's kind of hindered their utilization of Aurora, and that's really why we've launched Babelfish for Amazon Aurora PostgreSQL. What it does is to basically make Aurora PostgreSQL bilingual. So it will understand both Microsoft SQL Server T-SQL language and also PostgreSQL as well. So what that means is that once these customers do the data migration to PostgreSQL, they no longer need to refactor their code. I know there can be some, we're progressing that service. There might be glitches here and there, but we've made a good progress to make sure that there are a number of cases where you wouldn't need to refactor your code. And we'll keep developing that service to make it even better. And that means that customers can complete their migration faster. And what that also means is that you can have your Aurora PostgreSQL, your legacy code using your T-SQL, and you gradually refactor that at your own time. But for any new application you are building or any additional feature you're adding to that application, you can leverage the PostgreSQL syntax. So we've also made Babelfish for PostgreSQL open source. So it's all on GitHub. It will be coming in 2021 on GitHub, and is to be under Apache 2.0 license as well. Okay, so that's about databases. I'll quickly move into what we've done in the space of AI ML. This is always an interesting area when it comes to the trend at the moment, the tech trend at the moment, and when it comes to developers as well. AWS have released a couple of features that kind of allow developers to leverage AI ML and with little or no ML experience. So one of the services we launched was Amazon DevOps Guru. So if you really imagine a large-scale distributed serverless or containerized application, I mean, there are quite a lot of activities that happen in such applications, things like metrics, logs, and traces. And the DevOps teams usually kind of get their heads down, and the site reliability engineers get their head down in terms of monitoring this and making sure that they could maintain high availability for the applications. And in some cases, things might be missed, potentially issues that might be kind of reveal themselves earlier on before they actually become a high impacting, high availability issue. So what DevOps Guru helps you to do is to basically automatically detect potential issues that might impact the availability of your application. And it does it using CloudWatch metrics and logs, AWS config, CloudTrail, and Amazon X-Ray. Pulls that information together and be able to proactively or even reactively tell you where there might be potential availability issues on your application. And for this, it really makes a lot of difference for developers and DevOps engineers. You don't need an ML experience to be able to use this. I'll show you how to turn that on your environment. It will automatically detect operational issues. I think that's a key differentiating aspect of this. So it will continuously analyze your data, your logs, like you have mentioned, the key services it uses, and then be able to kind of give you recommendations of the things you can improve on the platform to remain highly available. And it's also scalable. It can support a number of workloads on your account, so you can look at your whole account as well. And it will reduce the noise, so allowing you to focus on what really matters and what really will move the dial when it comes to maintaining your application availability. So I'll quickly do a demo of DevOps Guru, more of a showcasing of what that looks like and how it works than an actual demo, to be honest. So on the console, you've got your DevOps Guru somewhere. Yeah, that's it. So this is it. Okay, sorry, I'm logged out. I'm gonna log in quickly. Okay, so going back to DevOps Guru, this is what it looks like. So once you land on the page, it gives you a nice dashboard that kind of shows you the general overview of the health of what you are monitoring. We'll come to that shortly. And then it also gives you a view of all the application stack. The thing to mention is that if you go to the settings, DevOps Guru allows you to kind of look at your entire environment, or if you're looking at a specific CloudFormation stack you've deployed on the platform. And the assumption there is that a CloudFormation stack would be like your application. So you deploy that via CloudFormation. So you can look at a CloudFormation stack and be able to kind of start telling you what's going on there. So I've selected all resources on the AWS account. So unfortunately, I have quite a lot of CloudFormation stacks deployed here. So it's looking at everything on my environment. And it will show you the latest proactive insights. Unfortunately, I don't have anyone at the moment, but it kind of shows you proactively, for example, if you're having Lambda concurrency issues or potentially running out of Lambda concurrency, and you've seen that pattern over time, it can potentially start kind of highlighting these insights, kind of help you to pay attention to those type of things. But what you can also do is to give you some reactive insights. So what I've got here is that one of the application load balancers on my account is acting up a bit. It's throwing a lot of 503 errors, and it's giving that visibility in terms of when it happens and the time range, and giving you also a kind of a nice GUI graph to kind of show that pattern of what really went wrong. And I think where it becomes to make really sense is the recommendation. I haven't got any recommendation for this particular issue, but usually most of your proactive insights gives you recommendation in terms of what to actually do to be able to optimize your environment and prevent any kind of availability impact as well. Okay, so that's DevOps Guru. Feel free to play around with the service, turn it on, attach it to a couple of the CloudFormation stacks on your account, or look at your whole account and just see what it gives you. And of course, all this will be available via APIs as well to query for developers. Okay, moving on to the next release we also did was Amazon Lookout for Metrics. So this is really another ML service we've released that helps customers to automatically detect anomalies and identify the root cause of those anomalies. And this is really the work we've done internally over 20 years of running Amazon.com. And we've kind of built models that could help us do this at scale. So if you imagine the clickstream data, for example, or user engagement data, or even things like CPU utilization of your instances. So anytime series-based data, Amazon Lookout for Metrics can have a look at that metrics and be able to kind of spot out where there are potential anomalies and identify the root cause and give you some recommendations of what you might potentially do to fix that. I think one of the key benefits of this is that we support quite a lot of connectors, so not just AWS services like S3 or Redshift. So you can basically dump your metrics in S3 and link it up to Lookout for Metrics, but it also integrates to 25 other tools as well, like Salesforce, Marketo, Zendesk. So you can pull data from all these sources into Amazon Lookout for Metrics. And what it does is to use machine learning to accurately detect any abnormal changes in your metrics, and create a summary of those anomalies to really help you to kind of understand what the root cause is, and then provide alerts and notifications through various channels to help you kind of respond or address those anomalies as well. One of the big benefits of Amazon Lookout for Metrics is its high accuracy to detect anomalies. So again, something for you to kind of test out and try out. But if you look at a traditional kind of metrics monitoring, what is usually done is to define a set threshold. And if any metrics kind of surpass that threshold, you get a lot of alarms. In some cases, you miss out some little anomalies that might be occurring in the system, but maybe you might not have overshoot your threshold. And this is really where Lookout for Metrics begins to kind of differentiate itself in terms of what it offers. These use cases we are seeing customers use this is things like customer engagement, like I talked about, things maybe login, devices that are using your application, clickstream data. You can also use it for operational metrics as well, things like CPU utilization, latency. Or if you have a lot of sales records, you want to detect potential anomalies in your pipeline coverage, or even in marketing as well, user engagement. These are the potential areas that this can be applied to kind of detect anomalies as well. Okay, moving on to the range of management services we also launched during an event. The next one I'll talk about is AWS Cloud Shell. So this is basically enabling customers to have command line access to their AWS resources and tools directly from a browser. So if you think about how you use AWS CLI today, you need to kind of install the AWS CLI on your laptop or your computer. You kind of install all the keys, and then you can access AWS resources using the CLI. But what this allows you to do is to do that directly from your browser, and it's fully managed environment by AWS. Comes with a lot of pre-installed tools like SAM CLI, CDK, AWS CLI, of course. It also comes with Python and Node.js pre-installed. And what it does is to use the credentials of the user that signed into the console. So you no longer need to manage any kind of access key or secret access key to be able to kind of use the CLI. And it gives you a 1 gig of persistent storage per region. And then you can save files in your directory, and you can carry your settings between sessions. Just to quickly demo what that looks like. So if I go back to the AWS console, and this is the nice little button here for Cloud Shell, the nice kind of console demarcation here for Cloud Shell. It takes a little bit of time to load. That's what we've seen, and a lot of customers have talked about this as well. So it takes a little bit of time to load. But some of the features while it loads, I can talk through, is that it kind of gives you various ways to kind of manage the view. You can kind of split into rows, create a new path, split into columns. You can also kind of upload files as well. So you can upload a file from your local computer to your cloud, to your 1 gig storage, like I mentioned, and you can also download files or scripts as you might wish as well. It also gives you a nice settings view. You can go change your font, enable face functionalities, and also kind of the light and dark theme. I know there's usual contention around this, prefer the dark one. But yeah, it gives you all those preferences that you can use on your environment. I'll just give this 1 or 2 minutes for it to quickly load. It can take a while to load sometimes. So yeah, so it's preparing your terminal, and off you go. So you can run your usual CLI command that you run today from your laptop. It's quite straightforward. You don't need to install any secret key, or you can do also the plain old listing of your S3 bucket as well. I'll quickly clear this as well. And for example, with respect to SAM, you can also do things like SAM init. So I don't need to install the SAM CLI here. So SAM init, wake up, go to AWS Quick Start. I can use a container or an image deployment. So similar experience you have with writing your SAM application and using command prompt to be able to do that is all supported here for you. just quickly going through, you can split it into columns as well. You'll be able to kind of see the SAM application I just created and be able to play around with it a bit. So that's really that same CLI experience you get from doing this from your command prompt is all now accessible for you from the AWS console via the Cloud Shell button. Okay. Moving on then to another management tool we kind of released. So if you look at the application management as a spectrum, on the one side you have platform as a service, where which are basically services that give customers developers a lot of productivity. But when it comes to flexibility and control, that's kind of a bit more reduced as on the platform as a service. Then on the other end, you've got infrastructure as a service, where you've got quite a lot of flexibility and control, but the developer experience kind of reduces because developers need to take time to set up the environment and get it running. Ideally, what you want is something in the middle, where you kind of give developers the flexibility and control they need to improve their productivity, but while taking into consideration the governance controls and also the security guidance and best practices you need for your workloads running on AWS. And that's really why we launched AWS Proton. What we've seen is that customers have been building abstraction layers on AWS to implement a feature like this, where infrastructure teams wants to make sure that any change on the platform aligns with the governance controls and also follow best practices architecture. But developers want to deploy code and get going. So that's what AWS Proton helps you to do to achieve that. So for large-scale container and serverless applications, it will enable the infrastructure team to kind of build and manage application stacks. And those stacks can be created to enforce central architecture and security standards as part of an application pipeline. But on the other hand, developers can then use those application stacks to be able to deploy their infrastructure and code pipeline and their software as well. So is the best of both worlds, and any update that the infrastructure team does gets reflected on the environment as well. So it helps build that kind of compliant environment where the infrastructure teams can easily define what are the guardrails that can be done on the platform, and developers can then be work around those guardrails and be a lot more kind of productive with the flexibility and control they need as well. Okay, so a service worth checking out, and we've seen a lot of customers building an abstract layer on the AWS platform to implement a feature like this. So this is basically taking away that heavy lifting and giving you this as a managed service on the platform. Another service we've also launched is the AWS Fault Injector Simulator, and this is a fully managed chaos engineering service on AWS. So just to talk a little bit about what's chaos engineering, it's a subject that's been kind of gaining traction over the past couple of years, and it's basically a way of proactively injecting failure on your environment for the purpose of understanding how your environment will react to those failures. And the aim is to be able to identify how your environment reacts and then potentially improve the resilience and performance of your environment. For example, if you have an application running on AWS today, if the connection to the database is lost, what happens to your application? What sort of response do users get? What sort of error handling mechanism have you put in place to be able to do that? In many cases, customers don't kind of find this out until it happens in production. And that's why chaos engineering is becoming quite popular these days, because customers want to really test all the possible failure scenarios, see how that will happen, and building resilience mechanisms to be able to prevent that happening if that actually is a real event. So we support this for EC2 instances, EKS, ECS, or RDS, and it will safely allow you to run chaos experiments with fine-grained access controls and to really kind of test complex real-world failure scenarios that might potentially happen, but giving you that confidence to see that I've actually tested this, and if it happens in the future, I'm covered because I've built in those resiliency in place. So that's what Fault Injector Simulator will do for you. It's coming soon, and it will be supporting ECS, EKS, ECS and EC2 and RDS once we go live with it. Another service we've also launched is Amazon Location Service. So this is a new service that helps developers to build application-based, location-based applications. So I know there are kind of third-party kind of location services that can help you to do this, but where location service begins to differentiate itself is when it comes to providing you the consistent API to be able to leverage map data from either S3 or here, which is what we're going to be supporting as part of the go live of this. I'll be looking forward to supporting other map data sources as well. It's cost effective. It's comes with a lot of privacy and security because it's running on AWS. So all the security features you get from running on AWS platform is also kind of comes with it. The key features that we have on it is ability to detect places. So if you think about geocoding and reverse geocoding, the ability to pull a map on a nice GUI to be able to see a map of a region in your application. You can put that into an application. Tracking as well to be able to track object moving within a map. And also geofencing, which is really setting a particular a polygon within an area of interest and then seeing how activities that happen within that area, either someone entering that area or someone leaving that area. So I'll quickly do a brief demo of what that looks like. So if you go on the AWS console, you could see, just quickly search the location service. So it will pop up here. It's going to load. So it's currently in preview, but you can try it out. Nothing stops you from trying it out. So you can try it out. When you click that button, it gives you, all these are available via API, but it's nice to kind of play around a little bit with it via console. So you could see it via console. It gives you this nice map of the world. You can zoom in or zoom out. Also, you can do things I mentioned, like identifying important places or popular places, and also doing geocoding and reverse geocoding. For example, I'm sure everyone in Ipswich, you know about the Black Tiles pub. So I'm going to quickly type Black Tiles pub, very close to me as well, which is my pub, close to me. So you could see Black Tiles pub kind of identified in the map. But I think when it begins to kind of make a lot of sense is things around geofencing. So for example, if I live in Mattersham, I want to kind of understand what is going on in this area. I can quickly do a geofencing around it, and I'm just quickly draw that. So you can draw a quick polygon around the area of interest that you are interested in. And that kind of gives you that area of interest. And then when it comes to a tracker, which is also another feature it has, you can basically track activities, either entry or exit from this particular location of interest. So I can simulate this with a little car moving along the road. Forgotten the name of this road. But you can see once it enters this area, it kind of gives you a notification, and this will be triggered as events into Event Bridge. You can basically configure Event Bridge to receive this event. And also when this is moving out, you will see an exit notification. And when we quickly go to, I'll quickly go to Event Bridge so that we can see the sort of what have been configured there. So what I've done is to configure Event Bridge to be able to receive any event coming out from Amazon Location Service. So if I quickly go to the rules, you would see at the bottom here, location event rule. It kind of gives you the pattern. I've set this event pattern to basically pick any event coming from AWS Geo, which is like the location service, but focusing it more on the geofencing event, and push that log to CloudWatch. So you can either send it from Event Bridge to maybe a Lambda function where you can perform a business logic, or to wherever you want to, basically to be able to respond to that event. And you could see on the CloudWatch, this is the event that came through just now, and you could see that gives you a JSON payload of kind of the car entering, and also gives you the next one of the car kind of exiting from the geofence area. So think about what you can build with this. So if you think about potential use cases, imagine building kind of a monitoring solution for maybe a delivery warehouse. where trucks come in and leave. So you can use that to monitor that. You can also use that to kind of potentially monitor when customers running your application. Maybe you're monitoring a coffee shop or maybe a shop that is doing a sale. You want your customers, when they come close to that, give them notifications about that or about the deals in a particular area. Those are some of the things you can start building with this sort of capability we've provided on Amazon Location Service. So that's quite an interesting one and what's worth exploring. Moving on to the final kind of service I'll go through, and this is the releases we've done on AWS Mobile. So, and that is AWS Amplify Admin UI. So for those that are not familiar with AWS Amplify, so AWS Amplify is basically a framework that we've built that consists with a number of tools like your Amplify CLI, client libraries, and also Amplify Console that enables customers to build a full stack application. So whether web or mobile application, AWS Amplify has all the tools and capabilities for customers to be able to build a full stack front-end, back-end mobile web application. So we released Amplify a number of years ago, and it's received good traction for our customers. But what we've also done with the release of this is that imagine that front-end developer. So for front-end developers that maybe code iOS or Android or just code on React front-end, they're not so familiar with the back-end aspect of things. And the learning curve to kind of create an AWS account, set up the accounts, create your security key might be a little bit of a steep learning curve just to kind of try out things out. So what we've done is to build a dedicated UI to enable customers to build backend outside of AWS console. So what it basically means is that if you have your front end ready, you want to just build, integrate it to a backend, you can use Amplify Admin UI to create your data model. So imagine a book app that maybe stores books and their authors. You've created the nice UI for the books and how to kind of manage the authors. But you don't need a persistent layer to be able to do that from a backend perspective. So Amplify Admin UI will help you to kind of create the data modeling for that, manage the content. And then once you test that, you're happy with it, it kind of achieves what you want from testing it locally. You can then deploy that infrastructure into AWS, where we'll create all the infrastructure on your behalf. You don't even need to worry about it. We'll place things like AppSync, APIs, and also DynamoDB as the backend data store. And then you can then start enabling things like authentication, authorization, and user management as well for your backend application. So it kind of makes it a lot easier for front-end developers to start actually building backend application with little or no knowledge of AWS platform. And I'll quickly demo what that kind of looks like. So if you look at your Amplify Admin UI, so this is the URL for it. So this is a dedicated UI that is different from your AWS account. It doesn't have it. It's not within your AWS account, although you can sign to AWS if you want to. But anyone can use this without an AWS account. And so imagine that customer I've talked about that builds their front-end application. They now want to kind of crack on to build that book author kind of application that shows you the books and the authors that wrote them, for example. You can easily go to get started. And for that kind of user, they want to build a data model so that they can store the books and the authors on the database and the APIs to be able to interact with that. And you can just go to your data, go to create a schema. So it gives you options to do authentication and file storage, but I'll focus on data. This too will need an AWS account, but this wouldn't. This is kind of getting you to the main thing you need to achieve. When you go to the blank schema, you can create a new schema. And while creating the new schema, for example, I'm just going to do a quick one here. I'm going to create the book here, a book as a schema. So this is like creating your data model. I can quickly add the name of the book here. And that's it. I can also add another model, quickly do that. I can add the author model. Maybe I can add another field here, say year published. If that's, yeah, for example. And I can also add in terms of author, I can add the name of the author, so, for example. And then I can add the relationship here to say one book to many authors. So similar to, so all these backend engineers worry about and front-end engineers and maybe find it a little bit difficult can easily be done via the admin UI. So you can define the entity relationship between a book and an author to say one book belongs to many authors. And once you say that, you are now ready to test it. So I've created my data model. I can test it, and this is also where it becomes it starts becoming interesting. So Amplify will, admin UI will give you everything you need to be able to test with this data model locally without an AWS account. So you could see it supports all the platforms, iOS, web, Android, also cross-platform, which is Flutter, which we released recently with the support for Amplify. But I'll just do a web one React. I know there is always contention about Angular Vue, but I prefer React, sorry. And then you can go next. The assumption here is that you already have like a front-end application. But if you don't, if you want to test this out, you can basically create a simple React application as well. And using these commands here. So it gives you that as an optional step. And then once you have your application ready, the next thing is to integrate your application with the backend data model you just created. And you can do that with Amplify CLI. So previously what we had here was App ID, but now it supports you to be able to pull the data model I just created from the Sandbox account. And then you don't go next, it gives you all the libraries you need to install within your application to be able to interact with the data model. And once you do that, and then it gives you all the code snippets you need to be able to perform CRUD operation on your data model. So things like create, update, delete, or query for an author, it gives you all the source code to be able to do that. And the same thing for also book as well. So, and then once you integrate this into your application, test it locally, see how it works, feel happy with it, you can then deploy it into AWS. And once you do that deploy, you don't need to change everything you've done already. At the back end, we will initiate, we'll create a stack that is basically creating an app sync, an API endpoint, and also DynamoDB at the back end to be able to store and manage your data. So that kind of makes it a lot easy for front-end developers to get started with building back-end application using Amplify Admin UI. It also offers other features as well, like content management, authorization, and file storage, like I showed you. But I think this is really the compelling feature of Amplify Admin UI. Okay, and that is really it in terms of. I think I'm a bit bang on time, or just a little bit above time. But if you want to know more, you can grab this QR code and kind of learn more on the AWS reInvent website. We've also launched all the reInvent sessions on YouTube as well. So you feel free to kind of check that out. And that's really it. Thank you so much for listening. I do really appreciate the time. Back to you, Phil.
Yeah, thanks, Ozzy. We have one or two questions for you as we went along. So Stefan asked around about the Lambda custom runtime image. Roughly, what would be the warm-up time of a container-based Lambda?
That's an interesting one, and it really depends on a number of factors. So for a Lambda function to run your code, it has to go through a number of steps. Again, it will depend on the size of your image because it needs to download the image and run that. So unfortunately, I would say it kind of depends on a couple of things. I know it's the usual reply for most IT questions, but I think it's a case of, it's not a one size fits all. It's a case of trialing that out, and seeing what that performance looks like and potentially optimizing your image as well. I think one thing that customers use to potentially, if you want it to run a bit faster, is to use things like provision concurrency, which will potentially warm up your Lambda function ready for requests to come through. So you kind of avoid that cold start time we have on Lambda. So those are ways customers use kind of warm up Lambda functions ready to kind of process requests in terms of performance. So yeah, that's what I would say on that. I don't know, Issa, as well, if you want to add anything, Isabel, feel free to. So
cool. No, I'd say that's clear.
Yeah, I've done it as well, and it is like that. It depends on lots of factors, how big your image is, and how much it's, because a Lambda layer, a Lambda kind of caches the images through the layer system inside Docker. It also depends on which public image you base it on. If it's one of the common ones, then that's also cached significantly. Another question we have is around, do you have any general advice for anybody who's starting out in a cloud career? So if you're just getting started on AWS,
Oh, wow.
where to start?
Yeah. I think I'm going to take myself 2 to 3 years ago when I started my journey to kind of learning AWS and delving into AWS. I would say 2 things. So the first one is it really needs to be something that interests you and you like. When I kind of played around with the AWS platform, I would say fell in love with it in terms of what it can do for you. So that passion needs to be there. I think the second thing then is around kind of going hands-on. So there are lots of materials out there in videos, in documentations, in blogs that can basically help you to get started. One of the learning resources I used was a Cloud Guru, and it's quite popular out there in terms of helping you to learn as well. So I'll recommend checking them out as well. And then the third one I'll mention is around kind of certification. So I know various people have their kind of dispositions around certifications, but I felt this being something new to me, and I like a couple of skills when it comes to maybe networking. I wasn't a network person when I started doing AWS, but if you use AWS, you need to understand a little bit of VPC here and there to be able to run your workload. So doing those certifications will help you to kind of understand the fundamentals or the baseline of at least the things you need to know when it comes to using the platform. So those are the tricky things I recommend. The passion, the get your hands dirty and learn, and then back that up with a couple of certs as well.
Cool. The only thing I'd add that is also attend events like this, user group events, that kind of thing, and just kind of attend as many of them as possible at all the layers that you can get to. Cool. Next one is around Cloud Shell. Can it run inside your network? Does it run inside your network, or how can it connect to anything inside your VPC?
Sorry, I didn't get that. So
imagine I imagine you've got some resources inside your VPC that you want to connect to. Can you use Cloud Shell to get to that?
Yeah. So
say your RDS instance or something like that.
Yeah. So if you just understand Cloud Shell as AWS CLI. So everything you could do from your command prompt. So if you look at the AWS CLI commands on the documentation, there's quite a lot of commands you can run, either to view your VPCs, to describe or to do API calls as well to your VPCs. You can all do that with Cloud Shell. In terms of doing a remote kind of session into your database, it should be something you could also do. I don't see any reason why you can. Something to trial out. I potentially need to confirm that. I haven't tried it out, but something worth kind of testing out. But I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to.
Okay. The last one before we just unmute everybody to have open questions around Proton, and how does what's the difference between Proton and Elastic Beanstalk? Why do you use one and not the other?
Interesting. I think they have a little bit of different use cases. So it's what Elastic Beanstalk was built for. I know it's kind of evolved over the years, was to really help developers without AWS knowledge to quickly kind of deploy the application on AWS platform. So if you have a Java application or PHP application or containers, I think they support containers now. You can basically bring it out on the platform, and it kind of runs, creates all the backend infrastructure, the load balancers if you need it, and the underlying EC2 instances as well to run your code. But what Proton gives you is sort of some level of management and governance when it comes to what can be done in your infrastructure in a consistent manner. So if you look at a typical environment with an infrastructure engineer and a developer, there's usually that infrastructure engineer pushing to kind of maintain high governance and the developer wanting to kind of experiment and try out things out on the platform. So what Proton helps you to do is to kind of provide an abstraction layer where infrastructure engineers can easily kind of define the guardrails they want to be able to be done on the platform in terms of security, architecture, and then developers can basically reuse some of those templates they've defined to be able to deploy their code. So you can still deploy your code the way you do it today with a pipeline. It doesn't kind of give you that kind of managed service the Elastic Beanstalk gives you. I think it's a separate thing altogether. But that's kind of where it fits. So if you need that sort of governance and structure and get the infrastructure team working closely with the developer teams, that's where Proton excels.
Cool. Got some more questions flooding in now. Jamie French says, when it comes to Babelfish for Aurora, is there any performance ramifications for using it as a translation layer?
Yeah, we've got. I've had that question a bit, and I think the current direction is that there will not be any considerable performance impact on that. But again, the service is still in preview. It's when we go G on it, we'll kind of trial it out. But the aim is to have little or no performance impact in terms of running your queries. And when you are using T-SQL, talking to Amazon or other PostgreSQL. So that's our aim. And when it goes GA, we'll see. But that's kind of where we want to get to.
Excellent. One from Jason Oliver. Lookout services like Matrix, is there any way of dry running these services against some sample data prior to justify the benefits prior to deploying and committing to a spend?
What I will say is that if you want to trial this out, I know some of the services we launched that are still in preview at the moment have some free tier or some kind of allowance we've given to some customers. But if you're really passionate about doing this, maybe doing a small POC at scale, reach out to you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to your AWS account manager. I will just connect you to your AWS to just inform your AWS account manager you have this request, and they will be able to kind of organize some POC credits or internal kind of credits to help you to kind of test run some of these things. So if you're passionate about it, you want to trial it out, check the documentations around the free tier that we've given already, potentially on the service. If we haven't, reach out to me or your account manager and we can try and work something out for you.
Excellent. Next one is from Alex. It's kind of related back to the Cloud Shell question area. Does it integrate with basically with Session Manager to allow you to connect into EC2 instances as a way of doing a jump host to other resources?
Interesting question. I don't know the answer to that one. Something I can take away and check and kind of come back to you on. But it's an interesting question, and what's checking that out.
And I also think I might know somebody else that might. There's a like a hero that I know that also does a deep dive into how you can do that kind of thing. So I might also pass that around for you, Alex. Me and Alex are going to know each other very well soon. He's going to be one of my team. So good to see cool. Alex on.
Cool.
I'm going to open the mic, see if there's any more questions. This is the scary moment. Everybody, you should be unmuted. Anybody else have any more questions? And then there's definitely silence. Anybody else have any more questions?
Make it collaborative. Don't feel shy. Shoot for it. Hopefully I can answer.
I'll leave it
Alex
open. Go on, Alex.
So my comment wasn't sort of specifically a question. It was following up on the other person's question around whether you could use Cloud Shell to access things like RDS and whatnot inside your VPC. And I had a little play about with it, and from what I could see, and it looks like, because it is emulating your local environment as closely as possible, you do have to treat it like you would a local environment with no network connectivity into a VPC. So a pattern that I've used before has been to use Session Manager to open up the session onto an EC2 instance, which is a regular shell session, as if you were using SSH. And then you can use that as the jump box onto other resources in your VPC, like RDS and anything else through VPC endpoints and the like.
Cool.
Any more questions?
All contributions.
All contributions. We're now into basically the free mode where you can talk about anything you want, gentlemen or ladies.
I'm going to contribute then.
Go on then.
I'm gonna I shared a couple of links for those who want to get started. There are some trainings that are available for free on the aws.training websites. And if rather than trainings, you are looking to understand, I have this use case, what services should I be looking at, or how do I start building this? I also added another link. I think, Phil, you will have to share them. I don't have permissions. That getting started just contains a lot of tutorials. So I want to build this, and it just walks through the steps that you need to perform to build whatever it is that is related to the use case. So I think those two are particularly useful and something to look at. On the Cloud Shell, that is a very good question. Just to clarify, Cloud Shell, when you open that console, it's an interactive session, so it's going to use the credentials that you use to open the console. And on terms of networking, as you can see, there is no endpoint. You don't have the IP, so the inbound traffic, there is no inbound traffic, but the outbound traffic to internet is open. So I think it was Alex that was explaining how you can use that. Yeah, yes, just keep that in mind. On terms of connectivity, outbound is open, inbound is not.
Cool. I have now shared those links where, regarding training and getting started for everybody. Good. Any more contributions, comments, questions?
I've got a question. This is David. So my question is around ease of data migration experience. So assuming you're using one of the database services and you'd like to, on AWS, and you'd like to move your data from one of those services, migrate it to another type of AWS service that works for you, or a database you are hosting on, say, an ECS instance, and you're in control of. How easy is the ease of data migration experience on AWS like?
Okay. It really depends on kind of the database platforms that you are considering, whether it's relational database or a NoSQL or a graph database or a time series database, or the case may be. But I think we have a couple of services on the platform that helps you to kind of move data from point A to point B. Specifically in terms of databases, we've got the DMS, database migration service, and the schema conversion tool as well. Again, there are a couple of caveats in terms of potentially some of what I call stored procedures, or some of the things you might have had configured on your database that might be a little bit difficult to migrate, but the schema conversion tools will give you all those kind of, you can run some sort of a high level analysis before the actual migration. But I think it's worth checking the database migration service to potentially see if it can be a good fit. If you're talking about NoSQL databases, for example, moving, let's say, to a MongoDB that you're running on an EC2 instance, for example, or moving from Dynamo to a MongoDB, for example, that can be a little bit tricky. There are a lot of other third-party tools on Marketplace, a couple of partners we work with as well that have built solutions that might be able to help for those kind of corner cases. But I think from an AWS perspective, we've got the DMS service that could help you worth checking out to see if it kind of will be a good fit for your use case.
To add to that, if I may, I 100% recommend the schema conversion tool. It's free and you can use it just to generate a report that will tell you the effort involved on migrating that database. So it's very useful. Just run it just to even get the report and see what is the effort implied, and it will give you the items with different levels of complexity. So things that can be done automatically by the tool, things that cannot be done automatically by the tool, it will tell you the steps required and the complexity. So if it's very hard or it's medium. So that's very good on terms of being able to understand the effort, but also to prioritize if you have different migrations. And the other tool that I wanted to mention is, because I know it was mentioned, the EC2. We also have Cloud Endure migrations that is super useful to do lift and shift migrations. It will take care of all the conversion of whatever server. It can be physical server, virtual server, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It could even be in AWS itself, and it will take care of not only moving and it can be a CDC, it can be a continuous synchronous migration, but it will also take care of installing agents and making the machine not native in EC2. So that's another tool that I would recommend if you're interested in this type of migration. But again, I could say what I would recall what Ozzy say. It depends on what type of migration. If you're just moving the data, if you want to change to a homogeneous or heterogeneous migration in terms of changing engines, or if you just want to do a migration of the machine. So moving to, for example, to EC2.
Thank you.
Any more questions or contributions? Cool. Okay. So at the end of this, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be sending out a survey. We wanted to get some more opinions about basically when you next want one, and if you want that to be virtual, physical, and what kind of content, that kind of thing. So please take the time to fill that in. Remember, if you've got a story to tell about how you use AWS, please get in touch and we'll be only too happy to have you speak. Again, we want to be local content. I suppose lastly, just to thank Ozzy and Isabel for this, and it's also good to see everybody attend, and we hope to see you all at the next one. Have a good rest of your evening and stay safe, and hopefully we'll see each other very, very soon.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.